to our weekly giving season session. So as you may know, here at DonorBox, we love sharing practical, actionable learning resources to keep you on top of all that's going on in our rapidly growing nonprofit sector. And that's something you'll take away from each week's 30-minute session. You'll leave each session with something that you can do right away. So by the way, I'm Jenna. I'm the nonprofit advocate here at DonorBox, and today I am joined by Cara. Many of you know her, our fundraising coach here at DonorBox.
Hi all, thanks again for joining.
So today's session, are you looking for a better way to ask for donations? And I bet many of you are nodding your heads right now, yes. But you know what they say, the best way to get something is to ask for it, right? But how do you do that in the most effective way possible? So today, Cara will be walking you through an ask strategy that makes the best use of your communications plan and will make your donors feel heard, respected, and inspired to give back. I'm really excited for this one. But let's talk about you first. In classic DonorBox fashion, we always start a session with a poll. So before we move into this next section, in what area would you like your nonprofit to grow? And I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll now. So engaging or communicating with your supporters, showing them the impact of their dollars, asking for donations or thanking them, which is what we call stewardship, right? Or is it something else? And if it is, drop it in the chat. Or maybe it's all of the above. I always forget to throw in that option. So let us know. Okay, well, it looks like we are tied neck to neck, engaging supporters and asking for donations. Well, thanks everyone for your responses. And Cara, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Jenna. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about making the ask easy. And in my opinion, the cycle of fundraising is at the very elemental level of this. And it uses each of the things that we mentioned in the poll. So it was really interesting to see how you were, many of you were saying, I'd like to have more help asking people for donations and engaging people, which was really interesting. So let's go ahead and Jenna, would you just go and change that slide? And let's talk about how we can apply the cycle of fundraising to your fundraising strategy. To make that ask a little easier. And I think a few of you have heard me talk about this before, but I think it's really important. The cycle of fundraising is a fundraising fundamental. It is something that if you went to fundraising school, you would have to study. If you studied for a fundraising test, this would be at the very core level. And so I think it is at the very elemental level of fundraising. I feel like you must know it first before you go out and create communication and create your asks. And if you're building a fundraising program, this is your foundation. And it's made up of some crucial steps that can really impact your success in terms of fundraising. And they include, and we'll go here, so identify. Sometimes this is referred to as identification. It's a formal term, right? We have involve, and sometimes you might hear that referred to as cultivation. Ask, and that would be solicitation. And then thank and show impact. Together, that is stewardship. We talk about each of those terms a little bit, but this is how they're linked together. And so let's go through each of those again. So first we have identify or identification. And then next we have involve, ask, or involve, that'd be cultivation. And then we move to ask, which would be solicitation. And then thank and show impact. And together those are stewardship. And we're going to put those into action today for your communication plan. But I want to go back to ask for a minute. Several of you mentioned that this is where you would like to grow. And commonly people think that fundraising is really isolated to the ask or asking for money. And we spend a lot of time thinking about it, being fearful of it, overthinking it. Maybe it even keeps you up at night because it's scary. And it can seem exponentially huge. I kind of use the analogy of a monster in the closet. So it always seems bigger until you turn on the light, right? And just like the monster in the closet doesn't seem huge when we turn on the light, when we think about putting the ask into action, the actual asking only takes about 10 to 15% of any fundraiser's time, or it should only take about 10 to 15% of any fundraiser's time. What actually takes the most time is this effort here before the ask and the effort after we ask. So before, we're communicating with our donors about ways to engage with the organization. Some people say that a good rule of thumb is to spend 60% of time doing this. You could even, 60 to 90% of time identifying and evolving and growing and creating relationships with your supporters. And then afterwards, after the gift, acknowledging and thanking them in thoughtful ways and reporting back to them on how their gift has made a big impact in all that you're doing in the world. So if you think about it, most of the effort should be done before we make the ask and then after we make the ask. And so many organizations do not consistently communicate with donors. They don't lack a schedule for emails or phone calls or social media updates. And these are really key to building strong donor relationships and make you and your organization stand out. So I think that using these to develop a communications plan is really going to make you stand out at year end and all through the year. So as we keep the cycle of fundraising in our minds, I want to introduce to you, this is what I call the touchpoint timeline. And I've used this method frequently on my own and with organizations I've consulted with. And it's a good exercise. It's super easy to keep posted and to modify it into a spreadsheet if you need to. And we have a copy of this, just a simple PDF that you can keep and work through on your own and customize on your own. But I want to walk through what this touchpoint timeline might look like. And so we'll just use one example here. So first, you're going to describe the activity you want to do. In this instance, we're going to do donor phone calls. And so with the fundraising cycle in mind, so let's go back to that graphic. What do you think that the cycle stage is? Go ahead and put that in the chat. So there are thank you phone calls. Would that be identify, involve, ask, thank, or show impact? What do you think? Yeah, Jennings, you are right. Absolutely. So the cycle stage for that is thank. So let's go back to our touchpoint timeline here. And so our cycle stage for that is thank. If you have a volunteer opportunity, that cycle stage might be involve. Or you're sending out a donor survey, that might be involve. If you're sending an impact report, the cycle stage would be impact. So see, that's what I mean by implementing the cycle stage there for that task. Okay. Next, our audience is going to be our live bunts. We just are using this as an example. So we'll call last year's donors who have not yet made a contribution this year. And the acronym for that is LIBUNT, or last year, but unfortunately not this. It's a funny term, but it's easy to remember. And then we'll start our thankathon. We'll make these thank you phone calls. We're going to start them today. So we need to get going on that before the end of the year. And then we'll wrap it up by the end of the month. And so that duration is 2 weeks. In this grid, you may have just a one-time activity like sending an email, and that duration would just be one time. So that's how you would use this. And then as we look at the communication channel, obviously the communication channel is phone. And what I would love for you to do is fill out the remainder of this form with all the communication touch points you're going to be using throughout giving season. And I encourage you to use a variety of activities based around that cycle of fundraising. So ask activities that thank, and then show impact, and then you can make your ask. And as you identify new supporters, engage them in your ongoing communication as well. So continually incorporate activities that involve, ask, thank, and show impact. I do understand that especially year end, a lot of those activities may be asks. You may be very heavy on the ask cycle. So as you move into the year, into the beginning of the year, make sure that you're really using those other cycle stages as well. But before you ask, just please, I try to encourage people to involve some of those other cycle stages before the ask, so that you're not ask heavy. And maybe it's not so scary, because it's way easier to say thank you and show the impact of all the good that you're doing in this world than to ask for money. So that is what we have for you. Obviously, Jenna, that leads into our weekly practical action.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, Cara. So your weekly practical action is, you guessed it, fill out your own touchpoint timeline. And I'm going to launch that link for the PDF that you can download in just a second. So we created a PDF for you to keep, and you can replicate it in a document or a spreadsheet, like Cara said, but fill it out, post it somewhere where you can see it regularly, and keep yourself accountable. Let's see here. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that link. Here we go. And as Cara was talking about light bulbs, I actually had a light bulb moment. Because you're here, that means you're a donor box user, which means that you can now access our new reporting features in the donor dashboard. And if you are looking for your live bunt, if you are using that to call folks, you can actually very easily use our reporting template, where you can download those live bunts right there in a tidy file for you to refer to. So thought I would mention that. And we also have 2 courses in Donor Box Academy that will walk through this concept a little bit more, plus provide a done-for-you touchpoint timeline that Cara created for everyone, which will be your communications plan for the giving season. So if you are new to the giving season sessions, this is the part where we open the floor up to you. Any questions you have about fundraising, it could be about your communications plan, it could be about making the ask, it could be about any of these parts of the fundraising cycle or something else, please throw those at us. We are here for you for the next 14 minutes to answer those. So fire away. Let's see, Jennings says, I'm all planned and may finish everything I can do ahead by the end of the week. That is amazing.
Woo! Good job, Jennings.
Jennings is a graduate of the Donor Box Academy. She took the 30 days to your year-end campaign course with Cara here. So that is great news. Thanks for sharing, Jennings. Terry says, we have 5 days of fundraising events coming up starting October 31st through November 7th. Looking forward to see what happens. Then I need to get into peer-to-peer. Yes, I love that. 5 days of fundraising events. That's a lot of days in a short amount of time. I would love to learn more about what you're planning, what those look like. Let's see. Michelle is currently doing an online auction. That's excellent. Yeah, I love that.
And Terry, you mentioned help with peer-to-peer. We have at academy.donorbox.org, there is a free peer-to-peer fundraising tutorial in there for you that you can go ahead and download or click and go through at your own pace. That might be helpful. And if not, you can always email us at academy@donorbox.org, or our amazing support team. We can help with I was reading the word QS. We can help with peer-to-peer fundraising.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Terry, I know you've been in these sessions before. I will advocate for peer-to-peer all day long. Just so many amazing possibilities with it. So more than happy to chat with you about that as you're on your journey.
Yeah, time is everyone's biggest challenge, Terry. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I love that, though. All musical events starting in Key Largo to Key West. Well, shoot, I'm in South Florida, Terry. I'll just drive on down. That sounds amazing.
And Jenny started her peer-to-peer, which is great. The invite. Can't wait to hear how that goes. Good.
That's amazing. How did you decide who you're sending your invite to, Jennings? Your volunteers, your donors. What was your method there?
Okay, friends, donors who are engaged more than just donating. Perfect. Yeah, I think those are going to be some good advocates for you, Jenny. So, I was talking with one of our organizations yesterday, and they mentioned that they have a hard time getting people to commit to peer-to-peer, and it does require it. They had some success when they called and then followed up with a text message, and then was able, said, hey, I need you to tell me yes or no. So they really had to be intentional about that. So
yeah, absolutely. Jennings, my mom told me to use my wedding thank you list. That's funny.
Those are the people that love you the most.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
I'll say my first experience with peer-to-peer was when I was working for an organization in Atlanta and COVID shut down everything. And at that point, I was a volunteer manager, and we couldn't have anybody on site at the shelter because we couldn't put any of our families at risk. So I'm like, what am I going to do with my volunteers? This is my job. If nobody can volunteer, what are we going to do, right? And I turned our volunteers into an ambassador program. So we migrated them, and within the first week, we got 20 people to commit. We set a goal. Had I known to use DonorBox at that point, it would have been so much easier. So our platform really makes it such a breeze. But we set a weekly goal, and a weekly goal for posting on social media, for sending emails, for even hosting parties. We had someone that did a tea party at her house, and the admission was $15, which was really creative. And it worked really well. And since I've, moved on to DonorBox, from what I know about the organization, the peer-to-peer is still going, even 2.5, 3 years later. So it was really cool. And that I found my love for peer-to-peer in that experience. It really, once it gets going, it just keeps on giving, which is really awesome.
Well, and I think the key is, like you said, just equipping people so that it's not so scary. Saying, yes, I'll help you with the email email templates and social media posts, and I'll let you know when and where. So hopefully hopefully that means a successful year end for everyone. As we talk about the cycle of fundraising, I would love for many of you to chime in the chat with, let's think about cultivation. What are some ways that you can cultivate donors? What are some ways that have been successful for you that others could learn from? As we think about growing those relationships. So that would be the involve cycle, and how to get them to know more about you and your organization. Is it outbound communications from you? Is it one-on-one meetings? Is it opportunities to engage with your organization? What do you think? One-on-one speaking to groups, Rotary? Yes, Jenny, yes. That's a really great one for sure. I had an idea, you were talking about obviously your organization is in Uganda, but is there a way that you can capture some video from the front line, since you don't have volunteers on the front lines, to make them feel like they're there? I wonder if that's a good cultivation tool that might be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Taking them behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking events. Yep,
absolutely.
And we do have a question here. Let me mark this one for you, Jenna.
Oh.
In Sri Lanka, do organizations get funds from DonorBox? Today is my first session.
Well, welcome, and thank you for joining us. So we have 2 payment processors. You can use Stripe or PayPal to collect donations. And if you have any trouble setting that up, so in your donor dashboard, because you're signed up with DonorBox, you will be getting some onboarding videos from me that will walk you through each part of the process, including setting up your payment processor. So Stripe and PayPal, or both, whatever you have access to, is what you can use to bring in those donations. And we accept many different currencies, and we can also add currencies if you just ask. So if you have any trouble, you have any questions regarding setting up so that you can rake in those precious donations, you can email us at support@donorbox.org. And I'm going to drop that in the chat now. And our support team is best in class. They reply so quickly, and they'll make sure that you are fully set up to start fundraising. So there it is. It's in the chat now.
And we have a ton of resources. I know as organizations are just getting started, they often say, where do I find donors, and how do I get people to support, my charity? And Jenna hosts a lot of great videos on the DonorBox YouTube channel. We have the nonprofit podcast on any of your podcast players. You can find us, and we often give little actionable tips that might be helpful to you, especially as you're getting started. So I encourage you to learn more about how to engage potential supporters that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can drop the links in the chat for those as well.
And Whitney says that some monthly updates from their executive director during COVID has really kept them going, because they found that they're opened, which is really great.
Yeah, that's great. What is your open rate? I'm just curious.
And I'm curious to know, Whitney, are you planning to engage those newsletter openers in any special way this giving season? Are you going to talk to them any differently because you know that they're engaged? I'd be curious to know.
Yeah.
Jennings has a good open rate too. I know that she shared with us.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I love that.
So Jen, 2 newsletters a week. Whoa, that's like beyond.
That's amazing.
Fox.
Okay.
I've not heard of SendFox. Have you, Cara?
Just through Jennings. So
well, there you go. Yeah, that's truly incredible. That's excellent.
Oh, good. Yep, absolutely. Because they're a warm audience. They know about your programs. They know who your executive director is, and so you have a nice warm opening for giving season. They might be some really enthusiastic supporters this year end, which is really great.
That's excellent. And speaking of giving season, do you guys have any, or well, many of you do, I'm sure. What are your goals for giving season? Do you have a dollar amount in mind, or a acquisition rate in mind? What are your goals for year end in general? Wow. So Whitney believes that her open rate is 40%. Woo, that's truly phenomenal too. It's really good, especially working in like the marketing arena. I can tell you that is phenomenal. That's great for you.
Michelle has a monthly newsletter too. Yeah, those are great cultivation activities. Yeah. That's a good way to share the message. And like I said, you can see who's opening and know who those potential people are who are really interested in your organization, which is great. Terry wants to raise $50,000 this giving season. Excellent. I love it.
Amazing. This is great. Well, I know that this was Q&A for you guys, and we were asking the questions to you, but still we do have a couple of minutes left. If you have any questions for us, feel free to drop them in the chat. If not, we're perfectly happy to hang out with you guys too. This is great. Yep. Terry asked, do you have any suggestions for social media campaigns? Social media is one of those daunting things, right? And what Cara and I always say is you're creating content already, right? You're doing those monthly communications or weekly communications, your newsletters. Do something what we call the golden thread. You don't have to create new content every time, but you can pull pieces from that newsletter and create a social media post around that. So even if it's just informational or showing impact or celebrating your supporters, you can do that. And then same thing, you're following that cycle in a very similar way, right? Where you're doing those things, and then you throw in that ask on the social media too, and including your QR code with DonorBox so folks can scan and give. There's so many different things that you can do. And what I'm going to do for you, Terry, is send you the link to our DonorBox blog where you can kind of dive in and get some inspiration. We have a lot of pieces about social media campaigns that may inspire you. But while I'm digging that up, Cara, I'll see if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, we do get into that a little bit more in the course, the Ask That Engaged course. If you wanted to explore that, I invite you to do that. Our communication strategist, Cara, the other Cara on our team, does talk about some things. And one tip that she gives is when you use a story, whether it's in a newsletter or in an appeal letter or something, you can break that into a series of 3 or 4 social media posts. So you're posing the problem, and then you're inviting people into the solution, and you're telling the story over a number of social media posts. That kind of keeps people engaged, like waiting for the next installment. And you can do that over a series of days or weeks. On Giving Tuesday, you could do it over the course of the day, even just to engage people in your story, since that's such a heavily trafficked social media day. So, and Terry asked, this is a great DonorBox question. How do you get your QR code?
Oh, yes. Pretty easy. And I'll see if I can't dig up the step-by-step guide for you, and I can email it to you, Terry. So in your campaigns tab in your admin dashboard, you just click on the campaign that you want to fundraise for. And there is a simple button that says QR code. So you'll see it pop up right there, and all you have to do is download it. I know we're at time now, so what I will do is I'm pulling it up right now, and I will email it to you the second we get off this session to make sure that you've got all the support there. But every campaign with DonorBox comes with a free downloadable QR code. I think these are especially great around giving season for social media and for your fundraising events. So I know that you have many coming up, and make sure you print those out, have them on your tables or your banners so that it's really easy to access.
Well, thank you all for giving us part of your day, and we'll hopefully see you next week, if not before.